The first gunshot of the morning sent the last of the songbirds scattering from the cottonwoods as Olivia Linden rushed to save what remained of her father's meager garden. The drought of 1875 had already claimed most of their crops, and now the neighbors' wayward cattle were trampling through the withering corn stalks that represented her last hope of surviving another Wyoming winter. "Get out! Go on!" she shouted, waving her tattered apron at the beasts. Her honey-brown hair fell loose from its pins as she darted between the animals, her calico dress stained with the red Wyoming soil that refused to yield to her family's 5 years of backbreaking labor. At 22, Olivia had watched her mother die of consumption 3 winters past, and her father had followed last spring, leaving her alone on a failing homestead with debts she couldn't possibly pay. The bank in Willow Creek had already sent their 3rd notice, and the townsfolk whispered about the Linden girl whenever she ventured into town for supplies she could barely afford. Too poor to keep the land, too proud to work for wages, and certainly too poor to marry, Mrs. Henderson had remarked loudly at the general store last week, not bothering to lower her voice when Olivia approached the counter with her meager purchases. The cattle finally scattered, but the damage was done. Olivia sank to her knees in the trampled dirt, her fingers grasping uselessly at broken stalks. Tears threatened, but she blinked them away. Crying wouldn't put food on her table or keep the bank from taking her land. "Those look like Double K brand," came a deep voice from behind her. Olivia whirled around, hastily wiping dirt from her face. A tall man sat atop a chestnut gelding, watching her with curious eyes. His black Stetson shaded a face tanned by years in the saddle, and though his clothes were trail-worn, they were of quality that spoke of means she could only imagine. "Your cattle ruined my corn," she said flatly, standing to face him. "Not my cattle, madam. I just recognized the brand." He dismounted in one fluid motion, removing his hat to reveal hair the color of burnished gold. "Name's Nathan Kincaid. I've got a spread about 15 miles west. The Double K belongs to Carl Stenson. He's been letting his herd roam too freely this season." Olivia crossed her arms. "Well, Mr. Kincaid, unless you plan to replace my corn or pay my banknote, I don't see how that information helps me." Something flickered in his eyes, not pity, which she would have despised, but something closer to respect. He surveyed the small garden and the humble cabin beyond, taking in the situation with a cattleman's calculating gaze. "I might be able to help with both, actually." He replaced his hat and gestured toward her cabin. "May I trouble you for a cup of water? Been riding since dawn." Suspicion warred with the proper manners her mother had instilled in her. "I suppose that's fair enough," she conceded, leading the way to the well. Inside the small cabin, Olivia filled a tin cup from her water bucket. The interior was spare but meticulously clean. A Bible lay open on the table beside a half-finished piece of mending, and dried wildflowers hung from the ceiling rafters, small touches of beauty in a life that afforded few luxuries. Nathan accepted the water with a nod of thanks, drinking deeply before returning the cup. "I've been looking for someone reliable to help at my ranch. The housekeeper quit last month, and the place is falling to pieces inside while I tend the cattle." He paused, watching her carefully. "It pays well, room, board, and $15 a month." $15 was more than Olivia had seen in 3 months combined. Still, her spine stiffened. "I'm not looking for charity, Mr. Kincaid. Neither am I offering it. I'm offering honest work that needs doing. You'd have your own quarters in the main house." He gestured around her cabin. "You could keep this place too, use the wages to pay down your debt until you decide what you want to do with it." Olivia hesitated. Leaving meant admitting defeat, surrendering her parents' dream. Staying meant certain ruin when the bank foreclosed. "I need an answer by tomorrow," Nathan continued. "I'm heading back to town for supplies, then home. If you want the position, Be at the Willow Creek General Store at noon tomorrow with whatever you'd like to bring. After he departed, Olivia sat at her small table, the enormity of the decision weighing on her. That night, she slept fitfully, waking before dawn to pack her mother's china and her father's books, the only items of value she possessed. The journey into Willow Creek the next day was both familiar and strange, knowing she might not return. The town consisted of one main street lined with false-fronted buildings: the general store, a saloon, the bank, and a handful of other businesses catering to ranchers and the occasional traveler heading west. Nathan Kincaid was waiting outside the store, loading supplies into a wagon. He acknowledged her with a nod, as if he'd never doubted she would come. "Miss Linden," he greeted, helping her place her small trunk in the wagon bed. "Ready to see your new home?" The journey to the Double K took most of the afternoon. As the miles passed, Olivia noticed the landscape changing: greener pastures, fatter cattle, and eventually the outline of buildings against the setting sun. "Welcome to the Kincaid Ranch," Nathan said as they crested a rise overlooking a sprawling property. A large two-story house stood proudly amid several outbuildings, corrals, and a bunkhouse. Olivia's breath caught. The ranch was easily 20 times the size of her family's homestead. "You run all this yourself?" "I've got 6 hands who help with the cattle and horses," he explained, guiding the wagon down the slope. "But the house has been neglected since Mrs. Porter left. My mother managed things until she passed 5 years ago, and then Mrs. Porter took over until her son needed her in Denver." The house revealed its neglect upon closer inspection. While structurally sound and impressive with its wide porch and many windows, dust lay thick on the surfaces inside, and the kitchen showed signs of a bachelor's limited cooking abilities. "Your room is upstairs, first door on the right," Nathan told her, carrying her trunk up for her. "Get settled in. Supper's at 6, though I can't promise it'll be anything special. That's partly why you're here." Alone in her new room, larger than her entire cabin had been, Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. The window overlooked rolling grasslands dotted with cattle, wealth on the hoof that represented a life she'd never known. She unpacked quickly, arranging her few possessions to make the space feel less alien. When she ventured downstairs, she found Nathan attempting to fry bacon in the kitchen, smoke filling the air. "Perhaps I should start earning my keep immediately," she suggested, taking the pan from his hands. He surrendered it with visible relief. "I warned you about my cooking." Working together, they assembled a simple meal. Over supper, Nathan explained the rhythms of ranch life: breakfast before dawn, the men taking meals in the bunkhouse except on Sundays when they'd expect something special in the main house, the supply wagon coming from town every 2 weeks. "The ranch keeps ledgers?" Olivia asked, thinking of her father's meticulous account books that had recorded their slow decline into poverty. Nathan nodded. "My foreman, Jim Ellis, handles most of it, but I check the figures." "Why?" "I have some experience with bookkeeping. My father taught me." She hesitated. "If you need help with that as well." Something like appreciation flickered in his eyes. "We'll see how you settle in first. One thing at a time, Miss Linden." The first weeks passed in a blur of activity. Olivia threw herself into restoring order to the house, scrubbing floors, washing linens, and learning to cook for hungry ranch hands. The work was hard but satisfying, and each night she fell into bed exhausted but knowing she had earned her place. Nathan was often absent during daylight hours, riding out with the men or handling business in town. When present, he was unfailingly polite but maintained a careful distance that both relieved and, strangely, disappointed Olivia. One evening in late September, as Olivia was preserving the last of the garden vegetables, Nathan entered the kitchen looking troubled. "Is something wrong?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "Stenson's men were moving cattle near your old homestead today," he said without preamble. Jim thought you should know. Olivia's hands stilled. My land isn't his yet. The bank sold your note to Stenson last week. Nathan's expression was grim. He's been buying up small holdings all over the valley. The news shouldn't have hurt. She'd known foreclosure was inevitable, but the finality of it struck her like a physical blow. I see, she managed, turning back to her canning. I'm sorry, Olivia. It was the first time he'd used her given name, and something in his tone made her look up. I should have moved faster. Moved faster with what? Nathan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as signaling frustration. I was planning to buy your note myself. Give you time to decide what you wanted to do. Stenson got there first. The implication stunned her. Why would you do that? Because it was the right thing to do. He met her gaze directly. And because I've come to respect how hard you work, how you carry yourself despite everything. Before she could respond, a commotion outside drew their attention. Through the window, they saw a rider approaching at speed. That's Will, Nathan said, recognizing his youngest ranch hand. Something's wrong. Will's news was grim rustlers had hit the north pasture, driving off nearly 40 head of prime breeding stock. Nathan immediately called for horses to be saddled. I'll be back when I can, he told Olivia. Might be late. She nodded, unexpected fear clutching at her heart, as she watched him ride out with 4 of his men, rifles gleaming in the setting sun. Sleep eluded Olivia that night. She kept the lamps burning and coffee hot on the stove, startling at every sound from outside. Near midnight, hoofbeats finally approached the house. She rushed to the door to find Nathan dismounting slowly, his movements stiff with exhaustion. We recovered most of the cattle, he reported, accepting the coffee she offered. Lost 8 head over the ridge before we caught up. No shots fired, thankfully. The rustlers abandoned the herd when they heard us coming. Stenson's men, Olivia asked quietly. Nathan's expression hardened. Can't prove it, but the cattle were being driven toward his new property, your old homestead. The implications settled between them like a physical presence. Olivia found herself standing closer to Nathan than propriety strictly allowed, drawn to his solid presence in a world that suddenly seemed filled with uncertainty. You should get some rest, she said finally, taking his empty cup. He caught her hand, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. Thank you for waiting up. The simple words carried weight beyond their meaning, and Olivia felt a blush rise to her cheeks. Of course. October brought colder weather and the cattle drive to the railhead in Cheyenne. Nathan would be gone for nearly 2 weeks, leaving Olivia in charge of the ranch house and Jim Ellis overseeing the remaining hands. The night before his departure, Nathan asked Olivia to review the ranch ledgers with him. She sat beside him at the dining room table, conscious of his shoulder occasionally brushing hers as they bent over the columns of figures. Everything looks in order, she confirmed, impressed by the ranch's prosperity despite the challenges of the season. You've built something remarkable here. Nathan closed the ledger, his expression thoughtful. My father started with 12 cows and a broken-down cabin. He used to say the land gives back what you put into it. He glanced at her. Like your family tried to do. Some land takes more than you have to give, Olivia replied softly. Or perhaps it just takes something different. Nathan stood, moving to the window that faced east toward her former home. I've been thinking about your property. It's not mine anymore. Stenson hasn't filed the final paperwork. There might be a way. He turned back to her. Would you want it back, if you could have it? The question caught her off guard. She'd been trying to forget the little cabin, to make peace with its loss. I don't know, she admitted. It holds memories, but it wasn't enough, Nathan finished for her. I understand. He hesitated, then added, When I return from Cheyenne, I'd like to discuss something with you. About your future. The cryptic statement left Olivia wondering as she watched the cattle drive depart the next morning, Nathan riding at the head beside Jim and the other men. The house felt strangely empty without his presence, though she'd scarcely spent more than an hour in his company on most days. The first week of his absence passed uneventfully. Olivia deep cleaned the house, baked ahead for the men's return, and even rode out with one of the remaining hands to check on a pregnant mare in the north pasture. The second week brought trouble. Carl Stenson himself appeared at the ranch house one afternoon, his expensive clothes and oiled mustache at odds with the hard calculation in his eyes. "Miss Linden," he greeted her from atop his horse. "I'm surprised to find you here, Mr. Stenson." Olivia stood her ground on the porch, wishing she weren't alone. The two ranch hands were out checking fence lines. "What brings you to the Kincaid ranch?" "Just being neighborly." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Wanted to let Kincaid know I've completed the purchase of your old place. Going to use it as a line cabin for my men." The casual cruelty of the statement was clearly intentional. "I'll pass that along when Mr. Kincaid returns. Also thought you might want this." He tossed a small object that landed at her feet, her mother's silver thimble, which Olivia had accidentally left behind. "Found it when my boys were clearing out the trash." Olivia felt her cheeks burn with humiliation and rage. She bent to retrieve the thimble, clutching it tightly. "Was there anything else, Mr. Stenson?" He leaned forward in his saddle. "Just a friendly warning. Kincaid's playing a dangerous game, interfering with my business. You might want to find yourself a more secure situation." After he departed, Olivia's hands shook so badly she had to sit down. The encounter left her feeling violated, as if Stenson had somehow marked both her former home and her current refuge as territory he could enter at will. When Nathan and his men returned 3 days later, successful and in high spirits after getting excellent prices for the cattle, Olivia hesitated to dampen the mood with news of Stenson's visit. But Nathan noticed her tension immediately. "What happened?" he asked, finding her alone in the kitchen after the welcome home supper. She told him everything, watching his expression darken with each word. When she mentioned the thimble, his hands clenched into fists. "I should have been here," he said, voice tight with controlled anger. "It doesn't matter. He was just trying to upset me." Olivia busied herself with the dishes. "Besides, he's right about one thing. I do need to consider my situation. I can't stay here forever as your housekeeper." Nathan was silent for so long that Olivia finally turned to look at him. He was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "That's what I wanted to discuss with you," he said finally. "I don't want you to be my housekeeper forever either." Something in his tone made her heart beat faster. "Oh, the truth is, Olivia, this house hasn't felt like a home in years. Not since my mother died. But these past months, with you here." He took a step closer. "I find myself making excuses to come back to the house during the day. I find myself thinking about you when I should be focusing on 100 other things." Olivia stood perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. "Mr. Kincaid—" "Nathan," he corrected gently. "Please, Nathan." His name felt right on her lips. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I admire you. Your strength, your determination. The way you've made this place better just by being in it." He paused, seeming to search for the right words. "I'm saying that I've come to care for you as more than an employee. Much more." Olivia's mind raced. Had she misinterpreted their interactions all these months? Had she been blind to something developing between them? "I don't have much to offer," she said cautiously. "The town was right. I am too poor to marry. I lost everything." Nathan shook his head. "That's where you're wrong. You haven't lost everything. You still have your dignity, your intelligence, your capacity for hard work and care. He took her hands in his. "And if you'll have me, you'll have this ranch and my name as well." The proposal was so unexpected that Olivia could only stare at him. "You can't mean that." "I do." His eyes held hers steadily. "I'm not a man given to impulsive decisions, Olivia. I've thought about this for weeks. I want you as my wife, not my employee. But only if that's what you want too." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Olivia felt tears gathering in her eyes, not of sadness but of a bewildering mix of hope and fear. "The people in town, they'll say you married beneath you," she warned. "They'll say I trapped you somehow." Nathan's laugh was short and genuine. "Let them talk. Anyone who knows me knows I can't be trapped into anything. And as for marrying beneath me," his expression softened. "Olivia, you're the strongest person I've ever met. Any man would be fortunate to stand beside you." He was still holding her hands, his touch gentle but sure. Olivia realized with startling clarity that sometime during these months of working alongside him, observing his fairness with his men and his quiet determination, she had indeed developed feelings for Nathan Kincaid that went far beyond gratitude. "I need time to think," she said honestly. Nathan nodded, releasing her hands reluctantly. "Of course. Take all the time you need." That night, sleep eluded Olivia again, but for entirely different reasons. She turned Nathan's proposal over in her mind, examining it from every angle. Was it merely kindness that motivated him? Pity? Or was it possible he truly saw in her a partner worthy of sharing his life and home? By morning, she knew her answer but hesitated to seek him out. The day passed in a blur of normal activities, the air between them charged with unspoken questions whenever they crossed paths. It was evening before she found the courage to approach him in his study, where he sat reviewing papers from the cattle sale. "Nathan," she said from the doorway. He looked up immediately, setting aside his work. "Olivia." She entered the room, her decision firm but her voice soft. "Before I answer your proposal, I need to know something. What about my land? You mentioned there might be a way." A smile touched his lips. "I wondered if you'd ask about that. I spoke with the bank president in Cheyenne. Stenson paid for your land, but he hasn't completed the transfer. There's still a window where someone with the cash could outbid him." Hope flickered. "You would buy my land?" "Not for myself." Nathan stood, moving around the desk to stand before her. "For us, as a wedding gift if you'll have me. We could work it alongside this ranch, or use it however you wish." "It would be yours again." The gesture touched her deeply, not because she desperately wanted the land back. She had made her peace with its loss, but because Nathan understood how much it represented of her family's dreams and struggles. "That's very generous," she said. "But my answer doesn't depend on the land." Nathan's eyes searched hers. "No?" Olivia shook her head, finding courage in his steady gaze. "I've realized something these past months. A home isn't just a piece of land or a building. It's where you feel safe, where you belong." She took a deep breath. "I feel that here with you." The hope that brightened his face gave her the last push of courage she needed. "Yes, Nathan Kincaid. I will marry you." His smile was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his once more. "You're certain?" "I am." And she was. The realization had come gradually, then all at once, that the comfort she felt in his presence, the way her heart lightened when he entered a room, the natural rhythm they developed working alongside each other, all pointed to feelings deeper than she'd been ready to acknowledge. Their wedding took place on a crisp November day, with only Jim Ellis and the ranch hands as witnesses. Olivia wore a new blue dress that Nathan had ordered from Denver, and he stood tall and proud in a black suit rarely worn except for business in town. The circuit preacher pronounced them husband and wife in the ranch house parlor, with early snow dusting the windows outside. The kiss they shared was their first tender but promising much more. That evening, after the hands had celebrated with a raucous dinner in the bunkhouse, Nathan led Olivia onto the porch despite the cold. Stars blazed overhead in the clear Wyoming sky, and the land stretched dark and vast around them. "I have something for you," he said, producing a folded document from his pocket. "The deed to your family's homestead, now in your name again and mine." Olivia took the paper with trembling fingers. "How did you manage it?" Let's just say Stenson discovered that certain bankers in Cheyenne value their long-term relationships with established ranchers over quick profits from land speculators. Nathan's smile held satisfaction. He wasn't happy, but he took my offer. Tears pricked Olivia's eyes. "Thank you. I thought we might build something there eventually," Nathan continued. "A proper line cabin, maybe, or a place for one of the hands to live. Or we could just let it be. A monument to your parents' dream." Olivia leaned against his shoulder, the solid warmth of him a comfort against the night chill. "We'll decide together, when the time is right." They stood in comfortable silence, contemplating the future stretching before them. The whispers in town had already begun speculation about the sudden marriage. Rumors that Nathan had taken pity on the penniless Linden girl. But standing beside her husband, Olivia found she no longer cared what anyone thought. "It's getting cold," Nathan said eventually, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Shall we go inside, Mrs. Kincaid?" The name sent a pleasant shiver through her that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Yes," she said, leaning into his embrace. "Let's go home." Spring came early the following year, painting the rangeland in vibrant greens and wildflowers. The Kincaid Ranch prospered under its new partnership, with Olivia's careful bookkeeping complementing Nathan's knowledge of cattle and horses. On a warm May morning, they rode together to the old Linden homestead. New life was evident everywhere, birds nesting in the cottonwoods, fresh grass covering the scars of last year's drought, and a small but promising garden that Olivia had started during their weekly visits. "I've been thinking," Nathan said as they dismounted near the cabin, which they'd repaired over the winter months. "This would make a fine summer place when the heat gets too much in the main house. Close enough to ride back and forth, but peaceful." Olivia smiled, resting a hand unconsciously on her stomach, where their first child had just begun to make its presence known. "I'd like that. And perhaps a place for children to learn about their grandparents' dreams." Nathan's eyes widened as he caught her meaning. "Olivia, are you?" She nodded, joy bubbling up inside her. "Dr. Miller confirmed it yesterday in town. Come winter, there will be another Kincaid in the house." The whoop of delight Nathan let out startled birds from the trees. He lifted her in a gentle embrace, his kiss tender but filled with promise. "You've given me everything," he murmured against her hair. "A home that feels like one, a future to build toward, and now a family to share it with." Olivia thought of the journey that had brought her here, the poverty and loss, the cruel whispers in town, the desperate decision to accept a position on a stranger's ranch. How impossible it would have seemed a year ago that she would be standing here now, cherished and secure, with the man who had given her not just his ranch and his name, but his heart. "No," she said softly, looking up at the man who had seen value in her when everyone else saw only poverty. "We've given these things to each other." As they rode back toward the main ranch, side by side across the rolling grassland, Olivia reflected that the gossips of Willow Creek had been right about one thing after all. She had indeed been too poor to marry until Nathan Kincaid had seen beyond her circumstances to the woman she truly was, offering her a partnership of equals built on respect and growing love. They called her too poor to marry once. Now they called her Mrs. Kincaid, mistress of the finest ranch in the county. But most important to Olivia was what Nathan called her. In the quiet moments when it was just the two of them, his heart, his home, his future. And that, she knew with certainty as they crested the final rise and saw their ranch spread before them in the golden afternoon light, was a wealth beyond measure.